I got an envelope with $1,000 inside and a note that said, "Please don't show up too much at your daughter's wedding. We'd like to keep the family image." I couldn't help but laugh, because they had no idea I was the one who funded the scholarship that got their future son-in-law into Harvard. My name's Edward Hayes. I'm 75, a retired engineer, and that night I decided to teach them a lesson about pride. Before we begin, take a deep breath, hit that subscribe button, and tell me where you're listening from down in the comments. I folded the envelope, slipped it into my jacket pocket. The bills were crisp, fresh from the bank, and cold, just like Victoria Reed's words, the mother of my future son-in-law. Funny thing, I'd spent my whole life negotiating million-dollar contracts, yet here I was being treated like some beggar given a handout. I sat quietly in my old pickup, staring toward the glowing mansion by the beach. Inside, Clara, my only daughter, was laughing with her fiancé, the man I once believed was decent. I'd promised myself never to interfere in her choices, but when I heard Nicholas say over the phone, "Your dad should sit at the back table, make sure the cameras don't catch him," I knew I had to do something. I didn't want to ruin her happiness, but I couldn't just sit by and watch her walk into a family where love was measured by bank accounts. I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, a 75-year-old man, white hair, wrinkled shirt, calloused hands. No one could see that behind that worn-out face was a man who once led a team designing jet engines for NASA, a man who'd once shaken hands with the president to receive a medal. I'd lived quietly in the Colorado mountains for over a decade after my wife passed. A simple life, a garden, a few old books, and the wind whispering through the pines that was enough. But tonight that peace was broken by an invitation and a dose of contempt. When I arrived, a security guard in a black suit looked me up and down, suspicion in his eyes. "Sorry, sir. Are you sure you're on the guest list?" he asked quietly. I smiled, showed him the gold-edged invitation Clara had sent. "Maybe I don't look like someone who belongs at places like this," I said. He didn't reply, just shrugged and opened the gate. Inside, the party was extravagant, almost to the point of vanity. Crystal chandeliers, a live band, champagne glasses clinking. I walked in, and for 3 seconds silence fell long enough for every eye to land on my worn-out suit. Nicholas stood near the stage. When he saw me, he froze for a moment. His gaze slid over me, then turned into a forced smile. "Dad, you made it," he said flatly. "Of course," I replied. "My daughter invited me. Why wouldn't I come?" Then came Victoria, drenched in perfume, her voice soft as silk, but sharp as a blade. "Mr. Hayes, how touching that you could make such a long trip. I heard the road from Colorado to Miami isn't easy, especially for someone your age." I gave a faint smile. Thanks to jet engines, the kind I helped design, the flight was quite smooth. She didn't get it, or maybe she pretended not to. She just nodded blandly and pulled Nicholas away to greet other guests. Clara appeared later, elegant in her white dress. When she saw me, her eyes lit up, then dimmed as she glanced around. I knew that look. The fear of a daughter worried her father might embarrass her. I hugged her gently, like I was holding her childhood in my arms again. "I'm here," I whispered. "Don't worry. I won't make you ashamed." She nodded, but tears had already slipped down her cheeks. The dinner began. I sat at the last table near the servers where the lights barely reached. Each time I raised my glass, people smiled politely, then turned away. I caught bits of whispers. "The bride's father looks so pitiful. I heard he lives off his pension. Clara sure knows how to marry up." Their words didn't hurt me. I just felt sorry. Sorry for people who think elegance is in what they wear, not how they treat others. When the main course was served, a young waiter approached and said softly, "Sir, someone would like to see you out back." I followed him into the side hallway. Victoria was waiting, envelope in hand. "Mr. Hayes," she began smoothly, "we adore Clara and want everything to go perfectly. I know traveling must be hard at your age, so Here's a little assistance. I opened the envelope, $1,000, all fresh bills. And what do I have to do to earn this assistance? I asked. She smiled, eyes cold. Just don't be too visible. We'd like everything to look perfect. I nodded slightly, slipped the envelope back into my pocket, and said, Thank you. I'll keep it. You never know, maybe someday. You'll need it more than I do. When I returned to my seat, the band had just started a slow, romantic ballad. I looked around Clara, smiling nervously. Nicholas with his smug arm around her, Victoria raising her glass, the crowd cheering. No one noticed the old man in the corner, smiling quietly, the smile of someone who'd just begun a game they didn't yet know they were about to lose. The music began to swell, soft, elegant, but somehow distant. I sat quietly in the corner, surrounded by laughter and flashing cameras. The smell of expensive wine and high-end perfume hung thick in the air, making it hard to breathe. People clinked glasses, posed for photos, smiling like actors in a flawless play. And me, in my faded old suit, just another invisible prop on the stage. I took a sip of water and watched Nicholas step up to the microphone. The spotlight hit his designer suit, his polished shoes gleaming like mirrors. His voice echoed across the hall. Today is the most special day of my life. I want to thank my parents who taught me that success never comes easy. And of course, the amazing woman I love, Clara. Thunderous applause filled the room. I clapped too, softly, slowly. Then he paused, smiled at Clara, and suddenly turned toward me. And of course, my future father-in-law. A humble, simple man. Someone Clara truly adores. Laughter rippled through the crowd, polite but edged with mockery. I felt the stares, the whispers, the smirks. I just smiled back, saying nothing. Clara glanced at me, her eyes full of confusion and shame. I gave her a small nod, as if to say, It's all right, sweetheart. Don't worry about me. Nicholas ended his speech with a toast. As he stepped down, I stood and walked slowly toward the bar. A young waiter placed a flute of champagne on a tray, but hesitated when he saw me. Would you prefer the cheaper one, sir? This one's a bit strong. I chuckled. It's fine, kid. They all taste the same. Only the price is different. His cheeks turned red. I took the glass and was heading back when I overheard Victoria chatting with a small group nearby. Clara and Nicholas will be moving into their new place in Pine Hills, she said proudly. We gifted them the apartment as a little wedding present. A woman nodded approvingly. How lovely, Mr. Hayes must be so proud. Victoria smiled, that thin, knowing smile. Oh, he's very, simple. I don't think he cares much for luxury. I sipped my drink, sharp and bitter, but not enough to wash away the taste in my chest. Later, guests were invited outside to the garden for photos. I stood in the back row near the string lights. The photographer kept saying, Closer, everyone, closer. But Victoria kept inching forward, blocking me from view. Eventually, I just smiled faintly and stepped out of the frame altogether. I took out my phone and quietly snapped my own picture, a grand scene full of bright smiles and glittering lights. And in the corner, just my shadow stretching long under the glow. A middle-aged man approached me. I recognized him, a friend of the Reed family, owner of a pharmaceutical company. Mr. Hayes, I hear you're retired now. I have been for quite a while. Well, that's good. Time to relax. At our age, work's not really an option anymore. I smiled. You're right. But sitting still was never my thing. He nodded, but I caught that flicker in his eyes, pity. The kind people reserve for someone they think is holding on to the last bit of dignity he has left. Then Nicholas appeared again with that forced grin. Dad, come on, I want to introduce you to some friends. They've been dying to meet you. But instead of leading me to the guests, he steered me toward the service area behind the hall. Just sit here, Dad. It's quieter. Too crowded outside. He didn't wait for an answer, just left. I sat on a metal chair surrounded by the clatter of dishes and the smell of reheated food. A young waitress placed a plate in front of me, cold, half-finished. Sorry, sir, they ran out of the main course outside. "That's all right," I said gently. "I'll eat whatever's left." She looked at me for a moment, then said quietly, "You're not like them, are you?" I blinked. Like who? The people in there. You look at them like you've seen it all before. I smiled. That's because I really have kid. The night wore on. Fireworks burst outside and the crowd rushed out to watch. I stayed seated. The light from the explosions flickered through the window, painting every wrinkle on my face. And in that moment I realized this wasn't an engagement party. It was a performance. And everyone wore a mask, even my daughter. I stood leaving the full glass behind. In my pocket, the envelope of $1,000 rustled softly, a bitter reminder. But that sound sparked something in me. An idea. A little test for this perfect family. I pulled out my phone and typed a short message to an old friend, a retired NASA reporter. "I need a surprise appearance tonight. Send me the 1989 video." I slipped the phone back into my pocket and smiled. The game had just begun. And this time, money wouldn't buy the ending. The fireworks outside kept roaring, painting long trails of light across the Miami night sky. While everyone cheered, I stayed behind in the nearly empty hall where the soft yellow light fell on half-finished glasses of wine and abandoned tables. The young waitress from earlier walked up and asked quietly, "Sir, they're cutting the cake outside." "Aren't you going?" I shook my head. "Go ahead. I'm waiting for a friend. A friend, though, in truth an old colleague from NASA who still owed me a favor." 30 minutes earlier, I'd texted him, "Send me the 1989 ceremony video with the caption, Chief Engineer Edward Hayes. Play it at exactly 9 p.m. I looked at my watch. 8:58. Laughter drifted back in as the guests returned, thinking the evening was wrapping up. But I knew the real part of the night was just beginning. Nicholas stepped onto the stage again, gripping the mic. "Before we end this wonderful night," he said, "I'd like to thank everyone for coming, especially my family and—" He glanced quickly in my direction. "And my future father-in-law, Mr. Hayes, a humble man I deeply respect." Laughter again, polite, but with that same mocking tone. I didn't move. My hand rested on the envelope in my pocket. My eyes drifted to the big screen behind him, where in just a few seconds another kind of truth would appear. At exactly 9, the lights went out. People murmured, confused. Then the screen lit up. Not a slideshow of the couple, but an old, grainy video, the kind that hums with age. A calm voice spoke, "Special Program 1989. Today, NASA honors Chief Engineer Edward Hayes for his contribution to the X-77 jet propulsion system, a foundation for the modern space shuttle program." The video showed a younger me shaking hands with the president medal pinned to my chest, the American flag waving behind. The room froze. Nicholas went pale. Victoria's mouth fell open. Guests turned toward me, then back to the screen, then back again, the same stunned look in every face. I rose and stepped forward, my voice steady but firm. "I'm sorry for interrupting your evening, but sometimes the truth deserves its own spotlight." No one spoke. I pulled the envelope from my pocket and placed it gently on the table before Victoria. "Your gift," I said. "I think you'll need it more than I will, especially after tonight." Nicholas stammered, "D-Dad, why didn't you ever say anything I didn't know?" I met his eyes. Calm. Unshaken. "You never asked. You never wanted to know. Because you didn't care who I really was, only how I looked standing next to your family." The air in the room turned thick and silent. Someone's phone clicked on recording. I saw dozens of lenses pointed my way and faces lowering in shame. I went on voice low but clear. "For 40 years I signed contracts where one signature could change the defense budget of a nation. And tonight, I was asked to sit in the kitchen, where it's more comfortable. So thank you, Nicholas, for the reminder." Victoria's face flushed red as she struggled to compose herself. "Mr. Hayes, we didn't want you to feel out of place among the guests." I chuckled softly. "I've never felt out of place. I just happened to stand on a different level, not of wealth, but of character. A few guests started clapping, then more joined in. Soon the sound filled the room, warm, honest applause. Nicholas hung his head. Clara's tears glistened in the light. Then suddenly a sound came from the main doors. A black limousine had pulled up. A man in a navy blue uniform stepped out and walked inside. He came straight toward me, saluted smartly. "Mr. Hayes, Sir, Lieutenant Miller. On behalf of NASA, I'd like to congratulate you. The 40th anniversary ceremony is streaming live right now, and we'd be honored if you'd say a few words." The room went still again. I smiled. "Thank you, Miller. I believe I already am." A ripple of laughter filled the air, genuine this time, not mocking. I turned to Nicholas. "You've often told people you got into Harvard on a full scholarship, didn't you?" He nodded weakly. "The man who approved that scholarship was me." His face went blank as if struck. Victoria gasped. Clara broke down completely. I looked at them one last time and said quietly, "I didn't come here to humiliate anyone. I came so my daughter would remember a person's worth isn't in the clothes they wear or the car they drive. It's in how they treat others, especially those they think are beneath them." Then I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, the applause rose strong, certain, unending. In that glowing light, Clara ran to me, threw her arms around me, crying, "Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I gently stroked her hair. "It's all right, sweetheart. Remember what I told you, a jet engine flies because it pushes from behind. Sometimes it's the pressure that helps you rise." Outside, the fireworks were fading, but inside me, another kind of fire had just been lit, quiet, steady, and brighter than them all. The next morning, when I woke up in my small house in Colorado, the phone was already ringing non-stop. I didn't even need to look, I knew what was coming. The screen was flooded with alerts, headlines flashing like fireworks. "Prestigious doctor's family humiliates NASA hero at lavish Miami engagement party." "The anonymous engineer who made the elites blush." I set my coffee cup down and sighed. I never meant to turn them into a national spectacle, but the media never knows when to stop. The video had gone viral, millions of views. Some admired me, some mocked me. All I could think was one thing: Clara's going to get hurt. The phone rang again, this time her number. I hesitated before picking up. Her voice was trembling. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't think it would turn out like this." I could hear her crying, soft and broken. "I know," I said quietly. "It's not your fault, but I need you to do something for me. Don't talk to the press, don't defend me, don't defend them either. Just stay quiet. The storm will pass on its own." She sobbed. "Nicholas got suspended. The hospital said they need time to review his professional ethics." I closed my eyes. Not pleased, not pitying, just understanding. And sad. 3 days later, the story still hadn't died down. The papers dug deeper. Victoria was forced to resign from her charity board. The Reed family's company was boycotted, major donors pulled out. Social media was full of comments like, "Never look down on someone until you know who they are." I got hundreds of messages from strangers, former engineers, college students, factory workers from places I'd once helped design. They wrote to thank me, called me a symbol of humility and dignity. But honestly, I never wanted to be a symbol. I just wanted peace. That afternoon, Clara came by. She had a small suitcase with her eyes swollen from lack of sleep. "I can't stay in that house anymore," she said, her voice hoarse. I just nodded, no questions, no judgment. I made her a cup of tea. The scent of mint filled the silence. "Dad," she whispered, "I know Nicholas was wrong, but I still want to believe he's not completely bad." I smiled faintly. "Anyone can change, but only if they truly want to. Don't use your kindness trying to save someone who isn't ready to be saved." Outside, the wind carried the scent of pine and cold air. The quiet of my house was broken by the sound of reporters' cars pulling up on the road, hoping for an interview. I drew the curtains, turned off the lights. I'd lived long enough to know online stories last only until the next one comes along. That night, Nicholas showed up. He stood at the door, shirt wrinkled hair, messy eyes hollow. I looked at him for a moment, then opened the door. "I came to apologize," he said, voice low and rough. "Not because I got caught, but because I really forgot who I was." I said nothing, just poured him some tea. He went on, "You once told me humility takes you farther than talent." I laughed at that. Now I get it. But maybe a little too late. I set the cup in front of him. "It's never too late to start over," I said. "But remember, an apology means nothing unless it comes with action." He nodded, eyes red. Before leaving, he placed an envelope on the table. "I know money doesn't matter to you, but please use this for something good, to make things right." When he left, I opened it a check for $1 million made out to the Edward Hayes Foundation Scholarship Fund. I laughed softly, not at the money, but at the irony. People only truly learn when they're forced to pay for it, with what they value most. I called Clara. "Sweetheart, tomorrow I'm going to Nicholas's hospital. There's something I want to do." "What are you planning, Dad?" "I'm giving back the gift he left, not to him, but to the students who dream of becoming doctors." She was silent for a long time, then whispered, "Dad, I'm proud of you." I looked out the window. A light rain had started to fall, drops gliding down the glass, glowing under the warm yellow light. Inside me, the storm had passed, but for them, it was only just beginning. The next morning, a thin layer of mist covered the Colorado sky. I sat on the porch, holding my cup of coffee, listening to the wind blowing through the pines like an old song from the years gone by. Clara was sorting through some papers on the table documents for the scholarship fund we were setting up. Nicholas's $1 million check rested neatly among the files, its edge catching the first light of day. "Dad, are you sure about this?" she asked softly, still uncertain. I nodded. "That money doesn't belong to me. It should go back where it belongs to people who need a chance." We drove to St. Augustine Hospital, where Nicholas used to work. When I walked in, a few nurses recognized me. They whispered to each other, curious. I smiled, nodded politely as if nothing had ever happened. People always stare for a while, until they forget your name. Nicholas was waiting in a small office wearing a plain white coat, none of the fancy charm he had that night in Miami. He stood up the moment he saw us. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. I placed the envelope on the desk. "I'm not here to take the money back. I'm here to put it where it belongs." He looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Starting today, this money will fund scholarships for underprivileged medical students. It'll be called the Reed Hayes Scholarship. If you're truly sorry, you'll help me run it." Nicholas lowered his head, silent for a long moment. Then he looked up, eyes glistening. "You're giving me a second chance, even though I don't deserve it." I smiled faintly. "We've all been undeserving of something at some point, Nicholas. What matters is what you do once you realize it." Clara stood beside him, quietly taking his hand. For the first time in weeks, I saw something real between them. No more pride, no more pretense. We signed the documents together. Nicholas offered to fund the scholarship every year and promised to teach free classes for students in the program. I just nodded. Sometimes real change doesn't need big words, just small, honest actions. As we left the hospital, Clara turned to me. "Dad, do you really think people can change?" I spoke slowly. "You know, a jet engine only stays steady because of the force pushing it from behind. People are the same, only when they're pushed back by their mistakes do they learn how to move forward." She smiled, her first true smile in days. That afternoon when we got home, I found a letter waiting. It was from Victoria. The handwriting trembled, but it was neat, Mr. Hayes. I've watched that video dozens of times. I realize now it wasn't you who humiliated us. It was our own arrogance. I've lost nearly everything. But maybe that's what I needed to remember who I used to be. Thank you not for your patience, but for refusing to turn your anger into hate. Victoria Reed. I folded the letter and placed it on the table, exhaling softly. Forgiveness, I thought, isn't about forgetting. It's about stopping yourself from remembering with anger. That evening, Clara and I sat outside on the porch. The sunset stretched over the mountains soft and golden like an old blanket. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Dad, if Mom were still here, she'd be so proud of you." I smiled. Maybe she's listening right now. We sat in silence. Far away, a car horn echoed down the valley. I thought back to everything: the $1,000 envelope, the fake smiles, the humiliation, and the night when truth finally shone through. Now it was all just an old story. But it left me with one simple truth. Truth doesn't need anyone to defend it. It only needs to exist. I looked up at the sky where the first star had just appeared. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "never judge a person by the clothes they wear. Sometimes those worn-out shoes have walked roads that the new ones never dared to take." Clara nodded. "You're right, Dad, and I promise I'll tell this story so others can learn from it too." I chuckled. "If you're going to tell it, make sure you ask them to subscribe first. At least then, I'll know my lesson helped someone." We both laughed, the sound mingling with the evening breeze. At 75, I've learned that wealth isn't what sits in your bank account. It's the peace you feel when you look back on your life. I don't need to prove I was right. I just need to know that after everything, I kept my kindness, and my daughter found herself again. The sunset closed one story, but for me it wasn't an ending. It was a quiet new beginning after a storm called the human heart. Thank you for staying with me till the very end of my story. If you enjoy heartfelt tales with a touch of surprise, go ahead and hit that like button, share it, and subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the bell so you won't miss the next story coming soon. And really, thank you for being here till the last moment. It means more than you might ever realize.